Have everybody here, so let me call the meeting to order. Can we have the roll, please, Lamont?
Yes. For the State Controller, Mr. McGuire. For the State Treasurer, Mr. Boykin. For the Director of Finance, Ms. Ortega. Ms. Higa? Chairperson Rosenstiel, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. So, first order of business, I want to welcome our newest board member who's sitting in with us on this committee today, and I'm privileged to be the first to chair a meeting or committee meeting that she is attending. So let me introduce Nora Vargas of Chula Vista, has been appointed to the California State Teachers Retirement Board of Directors. Vargas has been Vice President of Community and Government Relations at Planned Parenthood of the Pacific Southwest since 2009. She was Executive Director at the Latino Issues Forum from 2007 to 2009, consultant at Nora Vargas Consulting from 2005 to 2007, founding director at the Los Angeles Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs from 2004 to 2005, and Vice President of Governmental and Political Affairs at Planned Parenthood of Orange and San Bernardino counties from 2001 to 2004. A lot. She served as Legislative Relations Specialist at San Diego State University from 2000 to 2001, was a consultant at Kauffman Campaign Consultants from 1998 to 1999, and a confidential assistant at the U.S. Selective Service System from 1997 to 1998. Vargas is Vice President of the Southwestern Community College District Governing Board and Chair of the Hispanis Organized for Political Equality Board of Directors. So welcome.
Thank you.
Glad to have you here. So the first order of business is the approval of the committee agenda, and I would like to make one change on that for the committee's consideration, and that is that item 4, the self-assessment and charter review, is listed as an information item, but I'd like us to consider that as an action item, so that if we want to take action on it, we may. We do not have to take action, but if we change the agenda to make it an action item, then we can adopt the new charter language if we decide that we want to. So with that, do I have a motion to accept the committee agenda? Okay, moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Great. Thank you. So our next item is the approval of the minutes from our February 4th, 2015 meeting. Are there any comments or corrections? If not, do I hear a motion for approval? It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Great. Thank you. That's been approved. So now on to item 3, and that is the audit fiscal year 2014-15 audit services internal quality assessment review. So says that the presenter here is the chairperson, but I really think it's going to be Mr. Jensen, isn't it?
It's a consent item. That's
This is just a consent item. Okay. Oops, sorry. Thank you. So, and it's just an information item. So, is there anybody who has any comments on it? Okay. Then let's move on to number 4, and this is the self-assessment and charter review, which is potentially an action item. And Dr. Yetman, yes, I'm sorry, did I move beyond item 3 too quickly?
No, I raised my hand too slowly, and I do apologize for that, Mr. Chairman. Just one quick question on item 3, if I may, sir. Larry, so on R9, you indicate that on the fiscal year 15-16, you're going to be doing both an internal and an external QAR, both that same year?
Yes.
So how's that timing going to, explain that timing, doing both an internal and an external QAR in one fiscal year?
Yeah,
Okay, so our, just for your information, an internal quality assessment review, which is the QAR stands for, allows us to perform almost a self-check, if you will, of our compliance and preparedness for the external quality assurance review. So while this is scheduled for 15-16 fiscal year, our plan is to, in the first half of the year, we'll do our internal review, make sure that we're prepared for the external quality assurance review. And then the latter part of the fiscal year, we'll bring in an outside firm to conduct the external quality assessment review. And really what that's all about is sometimes you might wonder, well, who audits the auditors? And that's what this is. We bring in an external firm and they check to make sure that we're operating in conformance with our standards and the quality of work that we produce. And then we have in the, as you'll see later in the agenda items, in the work plan for June of 2016, we'll be bringing the results of both the internal and the external quality assurance reviews to the committee for review.
So, by the end of the fiscal year, so basically probably a year from now, the June meeting, a year from now, we would have the external review presented to the committee?
Yeah, we'll have both, actually.
Okay, okay. And what is the process for hiring or selecting somebody to do that, so that I just want to make sure that that process is going along in a timely manner so that we will complete it on time?
Yeah, so during this last fiscal year, we, and just recently, we completed putting together a pool of audit firms that we can select from. And while we were building this pool, we designed into the RFP the ability to perform this external quality assurance review as one of the services that they might offer. And so in order to help us in this process, we'll reach out into that pool and we'll solicit from those vendors that are in the pool and see which is the best firm for us to contract with in order to move forward. Now, we have the vendors in place, so it doesn't require a full contracting process. It's just a statement of work, and it should be a fairly expedited way for us to do that. So while we're doing that internal review in the first half, we'll be lining that up for the second half of the year.
So when do you anticipate having that firm identified and on board?
Probably by no later than November, December of this year.
Okay.
So the board doesn't get involved in that? Generally. Sure.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman?
yes.
If it's okay with the board, I wouldn't mind being kept informed of what the choice is for the auditor to audit the auditors, if it please the board. Just to be maybe a small part, not to stick my nose in, but just to maybe be informed of the process as it goes along.
I think that's a great idea.
You know, I'll provide you a periodic update as well throughout in my chief auditor's report, and just kind of let you know the status of that as we're working towards it.
Okay.
Sure.
Excellent, great. Okay, so item 4, the self-assessment and charter review.
So the charter here for the Audit and Risk Management Committee demonstrates how the board fulfills its fiduciary oversight responsibility by delegation to the committee, and those certain responsibilities are outlined in the charter for the committee. And what we did is we performed an assessment of the charter by making a comparison of it to best practices, and we used a couple of model charters, one that's produced by the Institute of Internal Auditors, another that's produced by the Association of Public Pension Fund Auditors, an association of over 60 public pension funds throughout the United States. And then we took a real specific look at some of the larger pension systems that had audit and risk management committees as well. And we compared the existing charter to those other models. And we identified in there any gaps or differences and performed an assessment of those. In addition to that, we developed a roadmap where we were able to trace kind of the agenda items that are presented to the committee that demonstrate how they fulfill their responsibilities. And so we looked and saw that, you know, did we have something in there, or did we need to add any agenda items and include them in the work plan for future meetings? And we did identify a couple of areas. Primarily, one is to really enhance the audit committee, or the Audit and Risk Management Committee's oversight of the financial statement audit. And then also we proposed some changes mainly to align kind of our internal audit activities to conform with our international standards. And it also increases transparency in the charter. And the proposed amendments to the charter are included on as attachment 1 to this agenda item. Primarily on ARM 12, you'll see that item number 2, the new item number 2, is with regards to the oversight of the financial statement auditor, and it allows the financial statement auditor, the independent external auditor, to make a presentation to the full committee outlining their audit scope and their approach to the audit. That's where they might discuss any new GASB regulatory regulations or anything that might impact the scope and their audit for the upcoming year, and allows you oversight and input into that plan. And then items number 10 through 12 are really things that align us with our audit standards, and it includes approving the internal audit charter, approving our audit plan, and then oversight of our internal audit function through the periodic quality assurance reviews. And so it really allows the committee to demonstrate its roles and responsibilities and help the board in fulfilling their fiduciary oversight responsibilities. And so at this point, I'd like to receive your input from the committee, or else in action if you choose to approve it or deliberate on the matter.
I don't see anybody with comments or questions. I'll just say that I had some conversations with Larry and Bob about this as well in reviewing the charter that others had and considering this. So I'm comfortable with these changes, and unless there's issues that people would like to talk about, I'd like to see if anybody on the board would like to either have Reina.
Yes, I don't have any questions or concerns about the items that are being proposed to be added. I wondered if there were things that were discussed and not added at this time, or if there are other changes that might be in the queue for considering at a later date. So, yes, I would be comfortable with approving them today. I just wondered if there's, what do we not know?
There were some discussions as we were putting the item together for your consideration, that there was a provision in there addressing the internal compliance program. And we are actually at the cusp of taking a look at that, and we actually are in the process of bringing in a consultant to review our current compliance program and make recommendations to creating an internal compliance program, which would include the reporting requirements. But my point of view was that putting it in the charter, giving you responsibility to oversee a compliance program that was not yet in existence, was not an appropriate, the timing was not appropriate, and I don't know how you would oversee it if it doesn't exist. So we would bring that item back to you once we have a comprehensive review of what we're doing, what we should be doing, what the appropriate reporting mechanism is. So again, it was just considered that we would bring it back at a later time when it was more prepared.
Yeah, and just to conclude, that was the only gap that we identified. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I would just say one of the things that we did look at here was to make sure that we were consistent with the discussion that we had had at the full board, that most of the major enterprise risks are not assigned to the ARM to take responsibility for, that we mostly have responsibility for financial risks, financial statement risks. That's why we beefed up the oversight of the audit. But that beyond that, our responsibility is more to oversee whether risks are being evaluated in a appropriate or robust way elsewhere in the organization. So we have some responsibility for taking a look at how risk is evaluated, but not the actual evaluation. Most of the risks have been assigned to either the full board or to other committees. So I think once we identify what this compliance function would be, it also, I think, is still a question whether that's a responsibility of ARM or someplace else.
Exactly. If, depending on the outcome and the recommendation, we may bring this item back to the committee for revision at a future date.
So would somebody care to make a motion to adopt this?
I'll move approval of the party.
Great,
Second?
great. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Good. Thank you. So next is the annual risk assessment. And Larry?
Yeah, our internal auditing standards require us to develop risk-based audit plans to help determine the priorities of the internal audit activity to ensure that they're consistent with the organization's goals and objectives. And in order to do that, we perform a risk assessment. And these risk assessments help the committee identify significant risks to the organization and how we apply our audit resources to assist in the achievement of the strategic objectives, and also helps to provide assurances to management and the committee that controls are operating effectively. Well, to accomplish this, Audit Services conducts an annual risk assessment using two different models, one for employer audits and the other for internal audits. And the employer audit risk assessment that we conducted, we looked at all of the we have 1,806 various reporting units for our employers, and we use 13 different risk factors. Those factors are outlined in the agenda item for you. And these factors are designed to assess the potential for payroll reporting errors, and also really to help us focus in on potential pension spiking and to identify that. Well, we identified about 335 high-risk areas, over 1,000 medium risk, and about 385 low-risk entities. And based on that scoring that occurs, we allocate resources to those various areas when we select the districts that we're going to audit this next year. But it helps us really to focus and concentrate our resources on the higher risk areas, because we do have limited resources. And so based on staff resources and availability, our audit plan outlines how many we'll conduct, and I think we'll discuss that in just a minute. But we also perform an internal audit risk assessment, and we look at internal and external factors. And so internally, we'll look at the strategic and business plans of the organization to help us understand what we'll be doing this next year. We get input from our executive management team. We look at prior year audits. We also look at some external factors, such as and consider whether is there new regulation that we need that might impact us as an organization, in any economic factors or news or events that are occurring. And then we again have some risk criteria that we apply, and as a result of that, we develop what we call an auditable entity. And what that allows us to do is really identify a specific area to audit as it relates to the risks that are identified. And so we took the risk management report of the organization, and we identified specific audits that could be performed. And the purpose of those audits is really to, one, provide the committee assurance that management has identified the right risks, and two, that they're on track with their mitigation strategies and that they've developed appropriate mitigation strategies in order to really manage those risks that are identified in that enterprise risk management report. And so we outlined for the committee here as well the types of audits that could be performed, addressing all of those risks. What that does is it allows the committee to see how we plan to provide audit coverage of those high risks to the organization. And we use that also then to develop our risk assessment plan. And so, and we then apply our resources and we according to standards, develop a risk-based plan. And so if you have any questions about the risk assessment, this is an information item. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
So, Bob, okay. So Larry, you said you were going to be talking about the employer audits, and then the numbers a little bit more, is that?
The next item, item number 6, is our audit plan that shows how we allocate the resources in order to address these risks that are identified here. So I'll highlight that as part of that agenda item.
Okay, but, just in terms of the number of audits that we're going to be doing for high risk, medium risk, and low risk, is that something you want to talk about now or talk about in the next item?
I think, no, I can talk about, I think you're referring to here.
Yeah.
Do you want to, did you have a question about that? Or? Yeah, I
So
think.
there's
I-
sort of two related questions.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, so,
Tackle this one first.
okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Jensen, so I have a question that might be the same question, I don't know, but in terms of how many audits are being done and where they are. But more specifically to the item 5 on ARM 20, the percentages of audit coverage that come from the high, medium, and low, and we've talked about this before, right now it's a 70-20-10. And given how the grand total in each category, see how it's 334, 1087, and 385. The 10% coverage on the low would actually, I think, it looks like to my eyes so far, they're getting old, but I think that would actually be more than a 20% coverage of the medium. And so it seems like there should be more high risk than next medium and then low. And I think that's just an artifact of the way the 70-20-10 is split out. And that's just a pure observation. And then another observation is, do you think 70 is the right number for the high risk category, or should it perhaps be something like 80? That's just an observation.
Okay, I think I understand your question. Historically, when they did their risk assessments, there was no repeatable standard methodology, if you will, for dividing high, medium, and low entities. We've also increased the number of risk factors that we use, and so you may notice that there's a larger number in the medium risk category than what there has been in the past.
Right, that's what they.
And so what we did was we actually applied a standard deviation to the population that allowed us to use a statistical methodology that can be repeatable annually, and we should come up with approximately, a good number in each category because of that standard deviation. And so we use a standard deviation of 8, and it allowed us to, so you'll see it's kind of a bell curve when you look at this, right? Mm. So the model, though, that you're talking about is 7-20-10, is a model that was used in the past, and I think you're right, because of that change in the methodology that we used, we should look at adjusting this to something more along the lines of maybe 85-10-5, something like that. But I guess the point that we want to make here is that everybody has a chance of being audited, whether they're a high, medium, or low risk entity, and that we will apply a larger percentage to the high-risk category because that helps us to focus our limited resources, but we don't want necessarily to apply too much to the low-risk areas so that they have a higher chance of being audited than the medium risk. So we can adjust that, and I'll have to go back and look at the exact, whether it's 80 or 85. But we'll look at that model that we've used in the past and see if we need to adjust it accordingly for our methodology going forward.
Yeah, that was my comment too, is that these numbers mean that there's a higher likelihood of being audited if you're low risk than if you're medium risk.
Yeah, I
And
think
that
this
doesn't
is how the
seem to make
model
sense.
worked from prior year.
So if you just kind of multiply out all the numbers, that's what it leads to, and it should be, the opposite. I mean, those low-risk people shouldn't be completely confident that they're not going to be audited. But, if they're, I mean, they're a relatively small percentage of the total, and so they.
I agree. I got so caught up in just having a standard repeatable process for each year that I didn't adjust the model there. So, but I feel good about our method going forward. That it's a standard process that you can apply each year.
Okay. Bob, did you have any other comments?
On the
or
next
questions?
item, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Table, I've got a couple of questions too. I'll just ask both questions and then let you answer, but one is K through 12 charter schools. Compared to the other types of entities, it looks like they have a much lower percentage that are in the high-risk category. And then other government employers, is that CalSTRS members who still have membership, but they're working in a I guess I'm wondering what's included in the other government employers.
I'm sorry, I don't know the name of those employers. I'll have to get back to you on that, or maybe.
The state of California
Well,
agencies.
well,
So if you had CalSTRS membership and
Well, or even if you're acting as a credentialed instructor in that particular agency, so that does exist, pardon me, I just put something in my mouth.
thank you.
So there are a number of those where the state is not only the the contributing entity, the non-employer contributing entity, but also an employer.
That's Robin Madsen, our Chief Financial Officer.
Sorry.
yeah, and then the charter school question that you had there, you're right. In the way that the risk factors are designed, particularly those that have active that were reporting with higher salary levels or that had the total number of members, as well as what we're seeing for excess reporting contributions either to DB or DBS, and so we don't see that as much in the charter school areas, and so they're rated as a lower risk, less likely of reporting errors.
It is interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so